The subject is ways Kurds can progress self-determination in Kurdistan. Kurdistan refers to the northeast section of the Fertile Crescent, in which Kurds are an indigenous majority. 100 years ago, Kurdistan was divided between 4 nation states. Today, there is a province of Kurdistan in Iran, a semi-autonomous Kurdistan region of Iraq, and an autonomous administration of North and East Syria. In the context of colonization, the UN defined determination as the collective right of people to decide their own destiny. From the beginning, the concept was controversial. In its earliest form, self-determination refers to all people being free to determine their political status and pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. This form is possible when all citizens have rights, equal rights, in a free, just, and democratic nation. However, this form does not necessarily allow for self-determination over territory within or across existing nation-state boundaries. For this kind of self-determination, people must have the right to achieve legal independence. This can mean becoming an independent nation-state, or having an autonomous region within a federal state, or a confederation of smaller districts. For more than 100 years, Kurds have been fighting for some form of self-governance. Realistically, the exact form will depend on internal, regional, and international factors. Hence, this webinar's focus on strategies and processes for Kurdistanis to build for achieving functional self-governance. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina and I will be hosting this webinar. I would like to start by acknowledging that I live on the land of Australia's Indigenous First Nations people, and I pay my respects to all Indigenous people around the world who have not ceded their lands. For this discussion, we are deeply honoured to welcome 4 panellists: Dr. Sherko Kirmanj, Dr. Hussein Tahiri, Shukriya Bradost, and Behrouz Boochani. They are all writers, analysts, and commentators who have thought deeply about Kurdish issues, and not one of them is a politician. Each panellist will speak for 10 minutes. They will be followed by a 5-minute discussion between themselves, and people are free to submit questions and ideas by using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We will air as many of your questions and ideas as time allows. Before we begin, I want to challenge you all by reading what an individual sent me. He prefers anonymity and says, "I'm not involved in politics and am not affiliated with any political organisation. I'm no expert, just a regular Kurd with some insight into the social dynamics of my culture, helped by living abroad." This is his challenge. Kurds need a major awakening. As a nation that's been under attack for centuries, we have not paused to assess how our history has impacted our individual and collective psyche. We love our land and culture, but we have low self-esteem and a self-defeating mentality, a victim mentality, which has led to tragic self-repeating cycles. It's as if we are sheep with Stockholm syndrome on steroids, living in a neighbourhood of wolves. We keep believing the lies and promises of the wolves. They poison our minds. We hide our fear and are polite, labelling our behaviour as humane. But we end up losing all that we've gained in our trauma, in our frustration at feeling so helpless. We turn on each other. I think this is the primary source of our political divisions, not party politics. We must overcome our individual and collective trauma from being constantly attacked and undermined. We must become confident, smart, tough. Where necessary, we must be ruthless and accept the consequences. The question is, what are we willing to do for our freedom? So I leave everyone with that question. What are all of us willing to do? So our first panelist is Dr. Hussein Tahiri. He has a PhD in political science and is an adjunct professor at Victoria University. He has authored a book on the structure of Kurdish society and the struggle for a Kurdish state, and written a number of chapters in books focused on Kurdish issues. He has chosen to speak about alternative strategies to current politics and armed struggle. Please go ahead, Dr. Hussein.
Thank you, Gina. I wish our audiences a very happy day or evening wherever they are. As Gina outlined, I'm going to talk about alternative strategies to current politics and armed struggle. I should first say that the current political parties in Kurdistan have played a crucial role in reviving the Kurdish cause and at the very least preventing the Kurds from being assimilated into the dominant cultures. However, they have been acting more like large tribes than political entities. Their loyalty is directed towards the party and the party's leader. This loyalty is not transferred to a higher authority, such as Kurdistan's national interest. This is the crux of the problem and the reason why they have been unable to be effective despite decades of armed struggle. Their arms have become tools to maintain and serve their structures rather than instruments of liberation. In fact, the era of armed struggle to liberate Kurdistan has come to an end. There was a time that arms could win, but not anymore. The Kurds cannot conduct an effective armed struggle when they are being chased by drones 24 hours a day, or when satellites observe them days and nights, or when they can be targeted hundreds of kilometers away by missiles and other sophisticated weapons. More so, in the future, the Kurds might be fighting the soldier robots. In addition, the primary purpose of the armed struggle is to exert pressure on the central governments to negotiate and make concessions. However, in countries such as Turkey, Iran, Iraq, or Syria, armed struggle does not exert the intended pressure on the government. For instance, would Erdogan care if the Kurds were to kill hundreds of Turkish soldiers? The answer is no. In fact, he might use such an event as an opportunity to mobilize the Turkish people and consolidate his power. Similarly, would Khamenei care if the Kurds were to kill tens of thousands of Iranian Revolutionary Guards or army personnel? Again, the answer is no. Therefore, armed struggle does not put pressure on these governments. As for the destruction that such a war leaves behind, they would probably care less, as the main destruction happens in Kurdistan. If Kurdistan is to achieve freedom, alternative approaches are necessary. First, we need to build an inclusive civil society. There is a pressing need for a civil society that is inclusive, where everyone has the opportunity to contribute in their unique way. At present, the expectation is for all individuals and sectors to serve the interests of political parties. If their skills and contributions do not directly or indirectly benefit political parties, they risk being perceived as outsiders, and their patriotism and loyalty to Kurdistan are questioned. The path to progress and freedom for Kurdistan lies in allowing everyone to excel in their respective fields, including journalists, artists, writers, musicians, business people, and indeed anyone else. When an artist advances their art, they are serving Kurdistan. When a linguist conducts research and contributes to the development of the Kurdish language, they are serving Kurdistan. The same applies to anyone who preserves or progresses Kurdish culture. All these individuals are contributing to the advancement and enrichment of Kurdish society, and they should be recognized and valued for their contribution. The focus should not be on serving narrow political interests, but on building a civil society centered around the development of the Kurdish society and its people. Second, empowering women. Women should be encouraged and given opportunities to realize their full potential. It is impossible for a society to reach its potential when half of its population is marginalized. The empowerment of women should not be limited to their ability to bear arms. Instead, it should permeate every facet of life. Women's empowerment is not just about providing opportunities, but also about creating an environment where women feel valued, respected, and capable of making meaningful contributions. This involves challenging and changing societal norms that perpetuate gender inequality and supporting ideals that promote gender equality. Third, focus on technology. Technology is still a space to develop into an opportunity. Indeed, technology holds immense potential for the advancement of Kurdistan. Social media in particular has emerged as a powerful tool for communication, organization, and advocacy. It allows for the rapid dissemination of information, the mobilization of people, and the amplifications of voices that might otherwise go unheard. It can be used to raise awareness about the issues facing Kurdistan, rally support from around the world, and put pressure on those in power. Kurdistan needs cyber peshmergas. Cybersecurity is a domain that is still open for competition. Leaders like Erdogan or Khamenei would be more worried about their money and assets than killing out their soldiers. A 16 or 17-year-old youth can inflict the harm that hundreds of armed Peshmerga cannot do. Drones are widely available and relatively easy to operate, making them a popular choice for a variety of applications. The beauty of drones lies in their versatility. With a little imagination, they can be used for a multitude of purposes. The digital economy offers new opportunities for economic development and prosperity. By promoting digital literacy and adopting a culture of innovation and business, Kurdistan can position itself as a leader in the digital age. Finally, if I were given the chance to offer advice to the people of Kurdistan, my message would be twofold. Pursue education and strive for wealth creation. These two elements, I believe, hold the key to unlocking a brighter future for Kurdistan. Education is the cornerstone of progress. It empowers individuals, encourages critical thinking, and fuels innovation. Wealth creation, on the other hand, is about achieving financial stability, encouraging economic growth, and improving the quality of life for all. It should be remembered that the goal is not just to get rich, but to use that wealth to make a positive impact. Education and wealth, at the very least, ensure that individuals cannot be easily deceived, bought, or sold. One, not only be improving their own life, but also contributing to a betterment of their community and ultimately their nation. To conclude, the case of suppression and oppression, alongside with an incompetent Kurdish leadership, have undermined Kurdish self-determination and hope for a liberated Kurdistan. A new framework and a new approach are needed to restore this lost self-confidence and hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other panelists would like to make a point or have a question?
To Hussein, for you braving or daring initiative and proposal, especially with what's currently is going on in Kurdistan and the armed struggle. My only question is about the use of cyber Peshmerga. I think if I may recall that you used, what exactly do you mean by cyber Peshmerga? I mean, why would even we need the cyber Peshmerga? I think the use of AI or technology in general, is very good proposal or very good let's say initiative, but not against the occupiers of Kurdistan, but rather just to mobilize people perhaps, or to make our discourse gets to the people, but not in terms of fight. Because if it is in terms of fight, so it's another kind of fighting, where when it comes to cyber security, then the occupiers of Kurdistan or the other the powers, Turkey and Iran, are much more powerful than us. So we need to use actually a tool that can be, that make us more powerful rather than puts us in a weakened position.
And look, there are two aspects of that. I think I mentioned that aspects of AI and using technology for the development of Kurdistan and Kurdish people of Kurdistan society. But there's another element of cyber Peshmerga. The reality is, if we like it or not, every country is using that, cybersecurity as a tool. And we are not, I'm not saying that this should be used on a frequent basis, but this should be used as a response to a particular suppression or a particular act of violence by a government. The other thing is that we have not much infrastructure for them to target. They are much more vulnerable than us. And to add to that, it is anonymous. So who has done it? It is in the dark. So not necessarily you can pinpoint a person or a particular group or a particular community for let's say cyber attack. But the reality is, if you like it or not, they are, every country is doing that, and a lot of other groups are doing that. And my issue, if we don't do that, if we don't utilize this tool to defend ourselves, we will be remain backward in the sense that we will remain behind. This is a concept I think needs to be developed in more details, but that's the initial thought.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Dr. Tahiri, because when we're talking about the new securities, a new way how to fight your enemy, cybersecurity, one of the most important ones. And why with the cybersecurity or the cyber Peshmerga, you call a very interesting name, because when we're talking about the Peshmerga, they not get paid. And even the cyber security of the most country, they get paid very well. The Iranian, and one of the good examples we've seen these days. Even Khamenei mentioned that they paid $1 million to that cyber militaries they have. They call it even jihad, cyber jihad. So when you're talking about that kind of the cyber Peshmerga never been paid. They are willing to do it for the nation cause. But it's important to mention that for the Kurdish fighters, that this kind of the organizing this kind of the attack will be more effective on the enemy. Because nowadays you don't go to the war with the army when you are not that strong in the case of the military, and you don't have that missiles, that drones that your enemy has. But in the cyber case, you can attack your enemy's powerful stations and disable them. Then you can attack them very much better than you have a small army that doesn't have that capacity that the army of the enemy has. And I think it's really interesting and is a good proposal for the Kurdish political party to working on that, not just for the political party, even, you know, a lot of political activists do invest on that kind of the cyber warfare for the better future for Kurdistan. I just wanted to add that to your point. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, Sherko, it would be wonderful if we could have a talent to bring down those drones that hovering over our villages and towns to destroy them. So if we could have that capacity and that skill to bring them down, that would be excellent.
The Kurdish strength, apart from being politically organised because of their armed struggle in the 20th century, has been their trained Peshmerga or trained militias, you know, whether it be in Syria or Iraq. Iran, what do you do when people call for disarmament, and yet you do need a trained force for defense and also to be used by superpowers like the US to stop dictators doing what they do?
Look, when it comes to a situation that we have to take arms and defend ourselves, I mean, we will have to do that. I think we have that capacity and that capability to do that. But using those arms to defeat the enemies, I think that is a lost cause.
Does anyone else want to question?
So I do agree it's very important to have cyber security in Kurdistan, although I'm pretty sure even though it is anonymous that they would probably still be attacked, so they would still need a force. So wouldn't they probably need allies and to work on diplomacy to initiate that?
Look, I don't think we are discounting other elements as well. We are just looking for the new additions or a new way of looking at things. Certainly, diplomacy is not discounted, but the issue is the traditional political structures we have been unable for various reasons to conduct an effective diplomacy. They have allowed us rather than be used as tools than to gain any diplomatic concessions.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Behrouz Boochani, a journalist, teacher and activist in Rojava who spent 6 years in detention on Manus Island and in New Guinea because he dared seek asylum in Australia. He has since become famous for winning several prestigious literary prizes for his book, No Friend But the Mountains, Writing from Manus Prison. When New Zealand allowed Behrouz to start a new life over there, it was Australia's loss and New Zealand's gain. His second book, Freedom, Only Freedom, was published in November 2022. Behrouz would like to speak about empowerment of civil society since the Jina Uprising. Go ahead, Behrouz.
Thank you. Very glad to be here today. Actually, I want to start with what Kak Hussein mentioned. I think that is really powerful comment, and it's very important that we Kurds, we should realize that we are living in a different area. It is a different time, and we should rethink about our understanding of the world, of the geopolitical situation, our people, our achievement, and what we lost. I think that is really important. And the way that we fight, the way that we struggle, because, you know, in Kurdistan, of course, we created a resistance knowledge. But this resistance knowledge, I think we should think about it, you know, because the time is different, the situation is different. I think the most powerful way to think about Kurdistan is how we empower ourselves, empower the civil society. Why? Because we should first ask this question: are we a nation? We should ask this question that about the 4 part of Kurdistan, that we build a nation or not. I think in my perspective, we didn't do it yet. Of course, we say that we are Kurds, but that is not enough to be a nation. You know, the first thing is very simple, is that Kurdish people, that's my experience actually. Recently, I visited Europe and Australia, and I've met many Kurdish people in the event, that even that is the reality, that all of Kurds cannot communicate to each other. And even they don't use like international language like English to communicate. They are using the colonizer's language to communicate to each other. And even that happened in Rojava now. The new generation, when they want to communicate to each other, many of them from different parts of Rojava, they speak in Farsi, because they don't understand each other. And that shows that we lost many opportunities. That shows that after more than 30 years having a state in Bashur, we didn't do that. We didn't use all of the Kurdish dialects that people understand them, at least people hear them, you know, like we know that 50% of Rojava are Kermashan and Ilan, you know, but we don't see that dialect in the Kurdish TVs, in the Kurdish platforms. We don't see ourselves in the political parties, in the leadership. You know, this is the really, it seems simple, but it's important, because that's when we don't understand each other, we actually we divide our society. That's really important. We didn't do a big thing for creating a dialogue that everyone understands to communicate. I don't mean that we destroyed all of the Kurdish dialects. No, we should keep them. We should work on them to develop them, but we should, in another way, we should work in a way that people communicate to each other. And that also showed how the assimilation process is actually destroying us, destroying our identity. And that is, you know, that's happening Rojava, what I see, you know. And another thing for actually build a strong civil society is that we should look at the diaspora as well. Kurdish diaspora, and the role of Kurdish diaspora is really important. But unfortunately, in the Kurdish diaspora, again, we, at least over the past year in the Gina movement, we see that we didn't protect the Kurdish narrative of this movement. We didn't protect it. we've been fighting so hard to protect this narrative that the slogan "Woman, Life, Freedom" is the key part of this narrative, and how this protest has started in Kurdistan, and other things, how the woman cut their hair, all of this. We didn't protect this. That is the reality. And that shows that we in diaspora, at least, we didn't make a strong network to work with other minorities in the society, to work with other nations who are oppressed, to work with the mainstream in the West. We didn't do that, and that's why we didn't protect this narrative. Many people still don't know about, they are not aware of this Kurdish narrative. And as Kak Hussein mentioned, it's really important that you mentioned about cyber Peshmerga. It's quite interesting concept, but that is not only for mobilizing people. Of course, that is important, but I think the main part of that is that how we mobilized our people to protect this narrative. And that is important. Always I say that we are colonized 2 times. First by Iranian government, by those Turkey, by Iraq, Syria, and second by Western media. If we look at the past year, we see that these platforms that the Western media created for Iranian women, what they call, we see that most of this platform occupied by middle-class Tehranian women. And we know that our people are paid the cost, at least a big part of it. The Kurdish women don't have a platform. And that is, I think that shows that we should really think about this. Of course, we achieved a lot over the past year, but we should think about this. For example, the other day I mentioned this example as well. ABC TV in Australia made a documentary about this movement in Iran. It was a big documentary, actually, like half an hour. And they talk with some women. All of them were middle-class Tehranian women. So what is our role here? This organization, your organization, or other organizations, is to use your position as an organization, because we are individual. I wrote a letter to that producer. I wrote a letter to some others to let them know that what they did is wrong. It is the role
Did you
of
get a reply? Did you get a reply?
From some of them, yes, but not the main person. But these organizations that we have in the West, that is your role to create that connection, to appear in the places that it needed. That's really important. That is just an example that I shared. So I mean, regarding building a nation, we should work in a way that all Kurdish people, they identify themselves as a Kurd. I'm not talking about getting independent or not. That is a political issue that is related to geopolitics, that is related to the international factors. But at least if we are not able to become an independent country, at least we are able to become a nation. And we should work in that way, you know, culturally, we should work on this, that Kurdish people decolonize themselves. Even our Kurdish leaders are assimilated. I see in them, you know. So we should learn how to decolonize ourselves. It is a very personal issue, how to decolonize yourself, you know. So, but unfortunately in Kurdistan, there are many people, many like political activists, that they just hide themselves behind this dream of getting independent, but actually they are doing nothing, many of them. We first, if you want to get independent, that's, I have many questions about that how we should do it. We should be realistic, but these people, this part of Kurdish like movement, they hide themselves behind this dream, and they attack others. But in the reality, they do nothing actually. We should first become a nation. That is important. We should work in a way that Kurdish people first know each other. We don't know each other. Even in Rojava, the north of Rojava don't understand Kermanshah and Ilam. They know nothing actually. They know nothing. Even in this map that you put at the beginning, you know, my province is not a part of that, but we are Kurdish. We are 95% of my province are Kurdish. But even in this map, we are not a part of it. You know, that is an example. So I mean that we should think about how we build a nation, how we understand each other and know each other. That is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's a big problem with mainstream media, Western mainstream media. We write all the time to ABC and other, you know, SBS and so on, and particular producers, telling them what's happening in Kurdistan, and we just get no replies. So I think Kurds have to start becoming journalists in Australia and America and England and everywhere, and asking interviews and getting put on mainstream television, and also to make the documentaries and that, because it's very hard to get a reaction in from mainstream media in a general sense. And when we do get invited on Q&A and everything else, they often don't take the question or whatever, you know. So it is a struggle to penetrate mainstream media. And it's very sad what's happening with the Jina Uprising and how the monarchists have been given a platform and the Kurds have not.
Sorry, I should mention this, you know, we are able, we are capable to do that.
Yes.
Because Palestinians did. And we are 40 million people. But our problem is that a big part of our society still are assimilated. There are many Kurds, I'm sure in Australia, I know that they are in the media, but they don't know, they don't realize that how it is important that we protect this narrative. And unfortunately, we didn't do it during the Gina movement.
Does anyone want to comment or ask a question?
Gina, if I may.
Yes.
Sorry, Shukriya, you can go ahead.
Yeah, allow me to disagree with Behrouz with some points, you know, about the language stuff. I'm a good example myself, because when 2004, I fled Iran to Iraqi Kurdistan and I'm Kirmanji. So my Kurdish dialect is Kirmanji. I'm coming from Urmia, the north of Iran. So I didn't know one word in Sorani when I arrived to Iraqi Kurdistan. What happened, it's been changed actually since 2004. I live in Iraqi Kurdistan. I learned Sorani. I have a chapter of book in Sorani. I have more than 100 articles in Sorani. But my case is not important because I lived there. I learned Sorani. When I'm talking, my mom and parents, when they first came to the Iraqi Kurdistan, they couldn't understand the Bahdini from the hook. I had to translate for them. But right now, because of Kurdistan region TVs, because people follow up the TVs, programs, news, I'm always like, I'm wondered when I see my sister who always been in Urmia and did her master, bachelor in Urmia. She knows Sorani right now. She can understand. She used some pure Kurdish vocabulary like a society. I remember because that word was so difficult for me, Komalga, society. So I remember that vocabulary was really difficult for me in 2004. But now my sister in Urmia, she understands this vocabulary. My sister in Australia, she understands Sorani very well when she listens to Sorani. So I'm trying to say, even this one is related to why we don't have that much voice in Western society and media. That all depends how much sources we have. So Iraqi Kurdistan became one of the opportunity for Kurdish TV to produce Kurdish program, Kurdish news, Kurdish narrative. Is it become opportunity for us, for Kurds to watch Kurdish TVs. So when you criticize Kurds based on that perspective, you have to know how many sources you have. Like even when you're talking about the Kurds in Europe, why we didn't have that much of the women life freedom, Jinjian, Azadi support in the Western society, why we always have a Persian and TVs, it goes back to the root of the societies and social developments in Iran. We didn't have an economy source for Kurds to become educated the way the rest of the country been educated. How many Kurds, they live in the US or the Europe, they came for scholarship, for education. Most of them, they came like a family of the Peshmerga. They came, they tried to survive. They didn't have an opportunity to go to the university, to study, to become a Hollywood star. We never had that opportunity. So that's the reason I think it's not fair to say all our societies back because of assimilations. As I do agree with Behrouz about the assimilation. We do have that part, but I mean, the most of the problem is going back this colonialization of our territory, our wealth is not being expanded on our people to be able to achieve what rest of the country have been achieving in the outside of Iran and inside of Iran. But I think for now, as I started with my own life background and experience, we are trying to achieve that. Now, even now, imagine we are 4 Kurds, 5 Kurds, we're sitting here and we're talking in English about what's happening in our people. That's another opportunity, maybe for us learning English, connecting with the people outside of the Kurdish language. It wasn't easy, but now we're trying to pass this message to the audience in bigger world to know what's going on in our land. I just want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you actually for raising that. I think that is really important. Yes, you are right. I fully agree with you. Yeah, I fully agree with you that, of course, like, for example, in Iran, the Persian people had more opportunities. We are probably the first generation that we had access to really a proper education. Yeah, that is true. That's really important. But what I mean by criticizing our society is that even with this resource that we have, we are not really organized well. We are not really using this. That what I say. For example, in Australia, my experience with the Kurdish diaspora is mostly in Australia. For example, yeah, we have many organizations. Last year that I visited Australia, I did 2 events with Kurdish community. I could see that it was for the first time that some Kurds from Kermanshah and Ilam, which are 50% of Rojava, they attended those events. And when I follow up that why is like that, I did research about it. I found out actually these Kurds, when they come to Australia, some Iranian organization or group or association, they just take control of them, or they create a space for them. That is it's tragic, but I fully agree with you. Yeah, I'm quite critical. That is my style, but I think we are capable to use our resource. We have enough resource to at least create a network. And just let me share an idea with you. My idea is that these organizations in Australia or in the Western countries, I think we should let Western people to take control of them, to do make a strategy for us to create connection and network with others. That's what I believe, because if we let them, people who are allies with us, people who know us, I know just from outside is like that's like people think that it's like a white savior culture. We just let Western people, but I think strategically it's important that we open this organization, this association that we have, we let other people like Palestinians, we let other people, Western citizens who know Kurdistan, who have sympathy to Kurdistan, and they are willing to fight for Kurdistan. We should let them to actually take control of this organization and create that network for us. That is my understanding. I know from outside, it seems that I just let the white people to do it for us. But that's, I think, strategically is important, because Hazara people did that. And now in Australia, Hazara people have quite a strong voice. I just talk through my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sherko.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Behrouz. I do agree with you that the Kurdish diaspora outside of Kurdistan are not as active or not mobilized as they supposed to be. I think the only thing that I would like to talk about in this regard is that we know when we talk about building nation, there's so many ways of building nations, but the thing that we can talk about is that because we don't have a state, so we cannot build a nation from the top down, which means that we don't have the institutions to help us. I mean, especially when we talk about Rojava or Bashur, we don't have the mass education in Kurdish, for example. We don't have a standard language that can be taught in schools. In fact, as you know, that the teaching in Kurdish is banned. I mean, we know that people are imprisoned for trying even to do so, just like Zara Muhammadi did. So we have the bottom up nation building process that we can use, and that is something that we need to do it, but we haven't done it as expected. I think coming back to Dr. Hussein's point about that the use of media, social media, the use of technology, it will really help. For example, we haven't been able even to do schooling online. I mean, we can do schooling online that can somebody from Rojava or from Bashur or from wherever that can use it to bring us together. I do think, just like Behrouz mentioned, that it's not about creating one language or eliminating the other dialects in Kurdistan, but rather to have a communication language. And communication language does not mean that we have to erase all the dialects that we have in Kurdistan. But just comparing the Kurdish case with Palestinian case, I think I may not disagree, but I think it's a different case. Palestinians have 22 countries, and all these 22 Arab countries, they supporting their cause. In addition, Palestinian case somehow is Islamized, which means that there's 54 countries around the world that they somehow support the Palestinian cause. And I also would like to support one thing, or agree with a point that Shukriya mentioned, is that Kurdistan, especially in Rojava and Bashur, have went through a process which I call it, or some other scholars call the de-development, which is in purpose has been left out, and building a nation in areas which has been purposely left out. It's basically an uphill struggle. But I strongly agree that the Kurdish community in Australia is not as active as has to be. But just mentioning that program, I did watch that program, Kag Behrouz, but I think in the program they did talk to a few Kurds also. It was not only from middle class Tehrani or middle class Persian background who talked, but I think they were. I think even one of them, maybe, if I can remember, was talking in Kurdish. I don't remember exactly, but I do agree that it was dominated by the middle class Tehrani women and men. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Hajar.
I just like to welcome all the panelists. It's a very nice discussion that we're having here. One of the items we really wanted to get across at this webinar was the solution. So my question to Kag Behrouz is, you spoke about building the individual Kurds. In your opinion, what's the best way to do that? And just again, because I don't think I'll be talking after, just like to welcome you, all the panelists and everyone online. Go ahead, please, Kag Behrouz.
Sorry, I couldn't understand. To do what?
Okay, I will ask the question again. In your opinion,
Yeah.
how do you solve these issues that you raised? In 2 or 3 points, please.
Yeah, I mentioned that, in Australia, there are at least 5 organizations that I know, So I think one of the things in my second book that Gina mentioned, I think that book is a good example that how I used my experience. And my personal knowledge to link all people, marginalized people in the society, to empower them. If we create that link between the minorities in the society, we are able to empower them. So regarding Kurdistan and Kurdish community, for example, in Australia, I think it's very important that these organizations are in Australia, they are quite divided because they have a different political background. They rely on some political parties in Kurdistan. And I could see that how this community is divided because they cannot think just about Kurdistan. They don't put Kurdistan in priority, but they put just their political benefits. So I think it's very important that the first thing that these organizations should do is to work together.
May I just say, Kurdish Lobby Australia is non-partisan, not associated with any particular political organisation or part of Kurdistan. And we have worked with every one of those groups that you've met.
No, I don't mention you. Just generally.
No, I tell you what, I'm just saying that I think you are absolutely right. that is essential for Kurdish people to achieve what they want to achieve, is to work between themselves and also with the other minorities, and also get to know the success of other people that have had to go for independence, like East Timor. Jose Ramos Horta is a person that I think I'm hoping that if these webinars come are doing well, I'd like to invite him to talk about what he thinks are the key successes for the independence of East Timor, because I think Kurds need to know about the other people that have succeeded in self-determination. But I think, unfortunately, networking is a two-way street, that all parties must want to network. And yes, you're right, the political divisions, and we're going to get to this later, are deep.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to be brutal. And thank you, Hajar. Incidentally, Hajar is the president of our association. So thank you, Hajar. And I'd like to move on. As I've already mentioned, Kurds are the indigenous people in a multicultural region. The problem is that the four nation states established 100 years ago based themselves on a chauvinist understanding of nationalism, whether it be Turkish, Arab, or Persian. A challenge for the 21st century is how to empower diverse ethnic populations within a state or between states. And it's a topic that Shukriya Bradost is investigating for her PhD, helped by her Kurdish background and her study and work experience in law and journalism. She will speak about the desecuritisation of ethnic group issues. Thank you, Shukriya.
Thank you, Gina. Allow me to thank you for putting together this timely panel discussion, actually. Thank you very much, Gina. Before addressing desecuritisation, I think it's necessary to define what is securitization, actually. When we're talking about the securitization, is a more extreme version of politicization. It's a process that occurs when a political actor push an issue from normal politics to the security realm. So when and why states or actors push for the securitization, the regimes like Iran, like what happened during Saddam, in Syria, even in Turkey, besides that it's a NATO member, thing is powerful, but it's a weak state. But the regime like Iran is my focus area. So when I'm talking about Iran, is a weak state and unable to respond to ethnic groups' demands and issue in normal politics. And then that's the reason they securitize ethnic groups. So Islamic regime can be best example when we're trying to say how a weak state used the securitization of ethnic minority group to forge or create an internal enemy as a strategy to retain a popular support. This had been a consistent policy of the Islamic regime since its inception, such as I have 100 of examples about the Islamic regime securitizing ethnic groups, but the most important one is really staying in everybody's mind is about the Khomeini's declaration of jihad against predominantly Muslim Kurds in Iran and calling them infidel. It tells you like the way the regime started to look at the ethnic groups, minority, the way they couldn't deal with the normal politics. So I put the securitization of ethnic groups in Iran during the Islamic regime after 1979 in 3 different stages. The first stage actually started with Islamic regimes establishing its own constitution. The constitution in the first point is important when they defined Iran as a Persia-Shia country and exclude, marginalize all other ethnic groups' identity. Someone may challenge that statement and say, how about Article 15 in Iranian constitution is talking about the ethnic groups' language right, which is not true actually. In that article, they don't talk about the ethnic groups' language. It's talking about some local language, is some way to address ethnic groups' language in this article, which stay awake until today, and they never apply any policy investing any sources of investment to actually teach them that language. Or even in the constitution, it's talking about how president should be a Shia. It means if you're not Shia, even you're born in Iran and Iranian, you cannot run for the presidential election. That's a huge, when it's coming to discrimination, political discrimination. So the first stage started with establishing this constitution. The second stage, I call it the by after 1980 is a militarization of ethnic groups, regions, particularly its Kurdish region, when the regime couldn't respond to Kurds' demands for political autonomy and political right. Their response was militarization of Kurdistan and cracking down all Kurdish demands there. And the third stage started by end of the Iran-Iraq war, when Rafsanjani, actually this part it goes what I had this comment about the Behrouz explanation. So when Rafsanjani at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, he introduced a policy called economy policy. That policy was centralized to Iran's central city, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Tehran, to put it all economic development after Iran-Iraq war to developing these areas. So the economy discrimination by Islamic regime started from that policy. That's the reason when people in Western society, they're talking about economic sanction has a severe impact on Iranian life, we have to make a distinguish between ethnic groups, regions, and the rest of Iran, because these regions, Kurdish region, been under Iran economic sanctions for during the Islamic regime for 4 decades, and even it goes back to the previous regime too. So it's not, we can say Kurds are under economic sanction in Iran for more than 100 years. So that's how it's related to my previous explanation when we're talking about why we don't have that developed society, that people in the Western society, we don't have that much sources, because it goes back when nation state was established in Iran, and when the budget of the country, the wealth country, was almost all of the country's wealth was invested in central city, the Persian dominated city. That's the reason when you're talking about our family background and their family background, they may have some people educated. When you're talking about the Kurdish region, it's rare to find some educated people. The country had a 14% of the budget for the education, and all spent it to the Persian dominated city. So that's how, when you're talking about the securitization, this securitization actually, the regime tried during the Khatami's first period, they tried to desecuritize ethnic groups. Khatami opened a few channels, TV channels, newspaper, but it was a short period when they found it, no, we cannot deal with ethnic groups because the policy of the foundation of the regime doesn't work this way. So they shut down all this channel, and the way the securitization of ethnic groups started from the Islamic regime is continued. So Khatami and almost all of the presidential candidate in Iran since 1997, they have been trying to use this securitization policy to get the ethnic groups vote. And this was even the Rouhanis use that. And they admit that actually, it's not my or other academic people's word, the securitization of ethnic groups in Iran. They admit that the ethnic groups issue being securitized in Iran, but they cannot solve this issue. I will go to that and say why it's impossible with the Islamic regime's foundations and constitution. It's not easy to desecuritize ethnic groups. But what is important here, what is desecuritization? What is the definition of the desecuritization? Desecuritization is mean you removing this issue from security to normal politics. Is an easy way to see the issue. It means don't talk about that topic as a security problem. The way people on Islamic regime, they address it all demands from Kurdish population as a threat to the national security, threat to the Iran sovereignty, threat to the Iran territory. And they call the ethnic groups activists as a foreign agent, as terrorists, separatists. All this rhetoric that's been using by the regimes for years, for decades, has been influenced the population too. So that in the securitization process is not just the government, actually, is the population too. So this is a connection with that rhetoric, that word. When government is successful to convince the part of the population that this part of the country is a threat to the national security. So it's easy to securitize this issue. That's how the Islamic regime been securitizing Kurds and other ethnic groups in Iran. That's not just Iran, as I say. Turkey do the same.
Now,
Syria has been the same.
How do you solve this problem? Because we're going to be running out of time soon, so sorry to cut you. How do you solve this securitization?
You know, because the problem with the securitization is more than this. We just said, okay, we're going to solve that, because it started with the nation state establishment of Iran, in Turkey too, in Iraq it started the same with Syria too. Why it is a problematic? I call it incomplete nation state establishment, because when Iran turned from empire to the nation state, one nation's identity, language, history, myth become this nation's identity. In a polity, they call it dominant ethnicity. During this dominant ethnicity, the ethnic that its ID become a national ID, the identity as ethnic is vanished. It will be vanished. That's the reason Persians say we are not ethnic group, ما قومیستیم. We don't have that identity because they are not ethnic. They are ethnic, but they are dominant ethnic. And when this nation state established based on one ethnic group, the other ethnic group's identity, automatically they become a threat to the national security, because their identity, they demand to be part of this identity is main challenging the base of this nation state identity.
Now, what do we do about it?
There is 1,000 of the research about how we can fix this issue. Many by mistake, they say, okay, about sharing the economy, developing this area. No, that's not going to work. And based on the recent development on political research, it says is a power sharing and political autonomy, political right is the solution. Political right, political power of the Kurds in Iran is the solution. So how you gain this political power? We're sure that with the Islamic regime, you cannot achieve that power. So for the future of Iran, changing regime Iran, that's the reason we don't have that uniting oppositions against the Islamic regime. And ethnic groups, Kurds, they don't trust the Persian opposition groups, because they are still under the influence of the Islamic regime about the Kurdish demands and other ethnic groups' demand, and they call them separatists. Because beside that, unfortunately, they live in the Western country. They are mostly educated, have a degree from the best university. I can see people from even Harvard University. When they're talking in English, they are the most democratic people. They are modern, looking for human rights stuff. But when it's coming to talking in, I don't know, it's weird. When if they talking in Farsi, they're going back the same dictator mentality that being grew up under this government's influence, that they don't have a respect for demands of ethnic groups in this country. And that's the reason we don't have a clear vision for future of Iran. Is this country, the empire that didn't collapse, is going to survive, and the people can live together with more political right, or it's going to be divided and collapse like a Soviet, like other empire, Ottoman Empire, and establishing new states or nation states. That's not clear for me. But what I'm worried about it, if the opposition don't address this topic correctly, we will see a civil war in this country, which is not going to help Kurds, because Kurds, we don't have an ally in the region. If any war happen in Iran, I do believe the first people who will be attacked and who will be the victim of this civil war, they are Kurds. We are good fighters, that's true, but we don't have other countries support that maybe other ethnic groups in Iran or the central governments have this support to crack down our people. And I don't want to be independent by killing millions of Kurds and Rojava to achieve that goal of the nation state. My first priority as one individual from Kurdish society is how I can protect my society and how I can find a way to achieve Kurdish rights without satisfying millions of Kurds' life. that's I will stop here, and please feel free to ask any question you have during our conversation.
I reckon an international webinar that includes Kurds, Arabs, Baloch, and all the other ethnic groups in Persia a series of webinars that they could talk across countries, you know, the diaspora, because you can't do much talking inside Iran, would be one way to go, wouldn't it? Because unfortunately, I've been told in Australia, there are not many Arabs and Baloch from Iran in Australia, but I'm sure there are in America. And you know,
actually, it's a good point, because when you compare Arab in Iran with the Palestinians, the way they support Palestinians, but they don't support the Arab in Iran, is the one interesting topic. I always challenge that question. So if they want to support their own ethnic groups, key ethnic groups in Iran, the way Turkey support Azerbaijanis, the way Republican of Azerbaijan support Azerbaijanis, we don't have that much support from Arab countries, not for Palestinians, for sure, not for Arab inside Iran. So that's based on each country's national interest, the way they put together their own foreign policy. And they are more willing to deal with the Islamic regime and see Iran as a weak state in the region. So that gives them the upper hand in the regional competitions. I do believe that's the reason they don't support that much.
Last but not least, Dr. Sherko Kirmanj, a civil engineer with a PhD in international studies and an author of 4 books and 6 book chapters. His topic is the rogue elephant in the room, the divisions between Kurdish political organisations, despite them having achieved miracles in the last 32 years. These miracles were only possible because Kurds were organised and at a critical time collaborated with each other. In turn, this enabled outside forces like the US-led coalition to work with them. Hence, Dr. Sherko has bravely agreed to discuss strategies to minimise divisions and enhance cooperation between KDP, PUK and PKK. So go ahead, Dr. Sherko.
Thank you very much, Gina, and thank you very much, Kag, Zirian and Hajar. Thank you for the Kurdish lobby for organizing this seminar. In fact, because of the time, I will be probably just only focusing on what is going on in Bashur, because it's going to be really complicated if you talk about Bashur and Rojava in one go. So I'll be focusing on Bashur, the division between PUK party and EHAT, PUK and KDP. To start with, actually, I did ask this question, the same question to my friends on Facebook. And to be honest, most of the respondents were not very positive, because they basically thought that the PUK and KDP, they are not the tools, or they are not the political parties that they will be compromising, or that they will be able to lead the Kurdish cause. However, taking into the reality of the situation that at the moment that they are leading the government and they are in power. So I will be just talking about basically how we can do something about rapproching or bringing PUK and KDP together for the sake of the entity that we have in Bashur. I personally believe one of the major issues that at the moment facing these two political parties, and in fact even the PKK, and when it comes to the PKK and KDP's relation, the issue is that what I called it in Kurdish, Bashaitan Kirdini Evidika, demonization of the other, which means that how the KDP see PUK as a shaitan, as a devil or evil, or PUK sees KDP as shaitan. So as a consequence of this, basically, what has happened in the last few years, in the last decades, actually, or maybe in the last, maybe way before the establishment of the KRG, that each party, I mean PUK or KDP, tries to either eliminate the other one or marginalize the other one. And in this process of eliminating the other one or marginalizing the other one, is that it makes them to rely on a foreign power or rely on the regional power. And normally it becomes either Turkey or Iran. And when Turkey and Iran comes into the game, into the arena, Kurdish parties actually become instruments or tools to implement the goals and interests of these foreign forces, which is 180 degrees contrary to the goals and interests of the Kurdish nation in general. Turkey and Iran, and to a lesser extent Iraq and Syria, want to weaken the PUK and KDP. They only support them to extend to stand against each other. For example, Turkey, which is known to support the KDP against the PUK or even PKK, never wants KDP to become the dominant force in Kurdistan region. This is true even for Iran when it comes to supporting the PUK. Therefore, any aid or support received by the KDP from Turkey or to PUK from Iran, it only provided to serve the interests of Turkey and Iran. Turkey backed down the support of KDP on the eve of the referendum, and this is a clear evidence that the dominant or the regional forces support the Kurds political parties only against each other, not for the sake of the Kurdish cause. Both PUK and KDP must, so this is, if I may say, a solution, must avoid consult the regional powers on internal issues, because whenever they come into the arena, they just make the situation much more worse. So the PUK and KDP's first probably move should be to avoid consulting Turkey and Iran. And by this, especially because the PUK and KDP are running a government in Bashur, I don't mean that they need to cut ties or raise wars against Iran and Turkey, but not to go and become consult or on internal issues. The other issue, which I think it's very, very important at the moment for the Bashur, is institutionalizing the Peshmerga forces. Means that basically forming a force that is Kurdistani force rather than siding with one political party or affiliated with one political party or two political parties. The Peshmerga forces should be created from compulsory recruitment, tajneed, ijbari, where elements from different ethnic and religious and sectarian backgrounds join the force. I mean, from all the sections of the Kurdish society. This helps integration of Kurdistani society, as in this case, Yazidis, Turkmen, Kurds, Christians, people from Suleymaniye, people from Zakhov, people from Kalar, people from Koya. They join one force, and that helps integration of the Kurdish society. The new national force, the Peshmerga force, should be created and organized by law. And the fighters of the PUK, the old traditional fighters of the PUK and KDP should not be part of this force. In other words, partisanship should be prohibited within this established force. weapons in the hands of political parties makes the possibility of civil war always in the air. So I would like to suggest a few other things to revitalize the experiment that we have in Bashur to help us achieve self-determination, or to help us reestablish our status that we have, because the current condition is really bad. So I think one of the things that we face in Bashur is the marriage between business elite and political elite. That marriage needs to be ended, terminated. The other things that I would like to suggest is establishing nation building board. Nation building board needs to look at how we can build a nation in Kurdistan. There's just like Behrouz mentioned, and especially in Bashur, because we have institutions. So it's not only building a nation from down up, but even from up down. I think we need also a strategic and critical issues board to see which are those issues that needs a consensus, needs support from all political parties, and especially when it comes to issues related to the central government. We also need probably a national media board. We actually in Bashur, we don't have a national media. All the medias that we have, it's political or partisan medias. And when you look at the Kurdish media in Bashur every day, probably you see any issues looked at from the perspective of the political parties and also from even maybe sometimes personal perspective rather than a group perspective or national perspective. I don't know how much time I have, but I probably would go straight to because I did have some other dot points actually to talk. But I think one of the things that we need to do in Bashur is diversifying Kurdistan region's economy by promoting and supporting non-oil sector. What is killing us in Bashur is basically relying so heavily on oil sector, and especially nowadays because the Bashur cannot export its oil, so it relies on Baghdad for budget, or it relies on Baghdad. So, and that is has put the Kurds in Bashur in very weak position. Creating a more attractive investment environment, it's very important. I mean, just recently I was listening to a Kurdish economist in Bashur, and he was telling us that 10 years ago, 30% of investment across Iraq was happening in Suleimania. Now it is about 5%. So imagine how much we lost in the last few years because of not having a creative or attractive investment environment. So how we can go ahead with this bringing PUK and KDP together? I think what I'm going to suggest is something comes probably out of the tribal mentality that dominates the Kurdistan region. So I do like to apologize for this, but in reality, we have two political parties that the tribal mentality dominates. So what I'm initiating, it comes out of the reality, not what I would have perhaps wished. So the KDP leader, I think Barzani, Masoud Barzani, the father, I think needs to visit Suleimania and hold a meeting with Bafel Talabani and really to assure PUK that they will not going to push further marginalization of the PUK, because the further KDP marginalizes PUK, the further it associates or strengthens its ties with Iran. And the same thing happens with KDP also. The further PUK pushes KDP, the further, the more KDP goes towards Turkey. So I think what Barzani needs to ask PUK is to stop supporting the Shia parties. I mean, the PUK to stop supporting the Shia parties in return that the budget of the region needs to be more balanced distribution, more balanced in terms of the projects that we have in the region, and that's what the PUK basically claiming that the budget is not evenly or balancedly distributed. Based on this understanding that neither party can sideline the other ones, I think maybe a new agreement between PUK and KDP is important. I mean, from 2005 to 2014, both parties, they had something, a power sharing agreement. That was not the best that we wished for as Kurds, but at least they were, it kind of worked and put the Kurdish position much better than what we have now. So I think a visit by Barzani to Slemania can basically start the real rapprochement between KDP and PUK. And the KDP and PUK must understand that if they are not united or they are not agreeing on a unified platform, they will be forced to make more and more concessions to Baghdad, which will further reduce their personal, party, and national position, not only in Kurdistan and Iraq, but also in the region and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sherko. When you say PUK should not rely on the Shia militias, what about KDP not supporting Turkey in attacking PKK? Because that's what a lot of people think they're doing.
The same thing.
Yes, we're trying.
No, I think it's the same thing. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
But it all comes back to what I firstly mentioned, is that's Bashaitan Kirdini Evidika, that seeing each other as existential threat. So the PUK sees KDP as existential threat, and the KDP sees PUK as existential threat. And that's what makes them, both of them, to affiliate with Turkey and Iran. I mean, we all know that the Turkish forces, Turkish army has bases in Bashur, and that's a threat not only to PUK or PKK, but it's a threat to our national interest. It's a threat to Bashur as an entity, and it is a threat to the Kurdish nation.
Shukriya?
Yeah, actually adding that the way Bashur's and other political parties didn't play very well in their strategy in the region. We know Bashur doesn't have that much option, as Dr. Sherko said, that they need Turkey to send the Kurdistan oil to Europe and to other countries, which they don't want to mention their name. And now for the budget, for the development, they needed Turkey. They didn't have that much economic connection with Iran, because we know Iran's situation in the global stage. But when it's come to the political party like PKK, KDP, I do believe Kurds needs to play smart in the region, because if you're trying to use the KRG territory, Kurdistan region government's territory, against Turkey, that's not really a smart move, because Turkey is going to attack KRG easily when Baghdad doesn't support KRG, and they are willing to have that to see that kind of the conflict or bombing KRG. That's the one reason. Secondly, when Iran using this militia group, Hashashabi and other, even Turkey affiliated group like a new Turkmen radical parties against the Kurdistan regions, you have to be really smart and you have to know what is the situation of the KRG and Kurdish party, both PUK and KDP. That in this situation, are you going to be more burdened on that responsibility, or you're going to make the job easier? That's a problem when this comes to competition among Kurdish party. They don't understand that. Like in Rojava, you cannot talk about the we need to have a like competition between Kurdish party. We have more than, I think, 13 political party in Rojava, but the one in the power is the PAYD. So you don't have that much competition there because they have a full control of the all sectors and power there. They don't have that much open to different political parties to actually to play political responsibility. But I mean, I'm trying to say, even for the Kurds in Rojava, Kurds in Rojava have been successful in that policy. Actually, they never been the reason for Turkey or Syria or Iraq to attack other parts of the Kurdistan. So I give them the really good mark on that, because when you're comparing to PKK, to KDP, to other part, you will see Kurds in Rojava, they don't have that bad background in the historical background when it's coming to helping other political party or other part of the Kurdistan, which is, I think, is important policy when we're talking about the competition between Bakur and Bashur. And the way we've seen recently, really, I don't know how I can describe these protests inside of Turkey. We see young people related to PKK, they have protests inside Turkey and saying and chanting against Bashur and KDP, not Turkey. And they put accusation
Yes.
of Kurds against Kurds, which for me is really, I feel the pain in my heart when I see that kind of the videos coming out on social media. And you are a Kurd in Baku, you've been oppressed for years under Turkish authority, and now you're in the Istanbul street or Diyarbakir, you protesting against KDP in Bashur. I mean, something's wrong here. We have to change that policy. We have to be supporter of each other. We cannot attack each other to be the strongest party among Kurds. Because first of all, we have to be strong among our enemy and international stage. Then if it's coming to competition, we have a different way to have this competition among each other, politically, democratic way, when we achieve such a goal, such a autonomy or independence in the future. Thank you.
Good point, Shukriya. And you, Hussein?
Yeah, I was just going to outline that what Sherko said isn't something that has been happening recently. For over 100 years, the Ottoman and Persian empires have been basically playing that game with Kurdish tribes. They always try to make a balance between Kurdish tribes in a way that no one can win. Let's say if a tribal leaders try to control Kurdistan, either the Ottoman or Persian empires would help support other tribes to balance that and then defeat that. Then you have been having this one, that kind of balance of power in Kurdistan, starting with tribal leaders over 100 years. And that balance has been transferred to Kurdish political parties.
Sherko, who would be responsible for making these lists of common interests, like core interests that all Kurdish parties could consolidate around? Who would be doing that? Who do you propose?
Who do I propose to do that? As a person, you mean?
As a person who, like, or organization, person, like, it's one thing suggesting these things, acting on them is the important thing. And I think you're absolutely right in all your bullet points. But who do you think is best positioned to do that?
I'm afraid to say that it's still the Barzani, the father, can initiate something. that can probably lead, especially in Bashur and the Kurdish worldwide. Probably the Kanaka can do something, perhaps, but individually, people like Behrouz. I mean, why not Behrouz? I mean, I think people like Behrouz can do something. I mean, we can do things. We can. I mean, and knowing that, or just listening to the two of our presenters mention the civil society, strengthening the Kurdish civil society. I think the pressure needs to come first from the civil society, individually and groups. I mean, we all can do something. We can pressure further the Kurdish political parties to agree on something on our national interest. I mean, everybody can do. You can do something, Gina, also. I mean, one of the issues probably we haven't in Kurdish case we haven't done it is perhaps sometimes. I mean, worldwide, I think we need at the moment as individuals or as groups is that to bring one international player, like a movie star, Robert De Niro, perhaps somebody like this, or at least we need to convince one of the international players in terms of the country. I mean, a state like Germany or Italy or France, especially in this case. France is perhaps the best positioned at the moment. So we need, as a Kurds, to initiate things, but at the same time, maybe we need to have a very important actor, a very important state player like France to pressure the Kurdish political parties to compromise, basically. Thank you.
Gina, we have, like I said before, a lot of questions, so I would like to leave a couple of minutes, but Kagnadir and Kagberzu have their name up. If we can allow Kagnadir.
Can I just say, we are being very Kurdish here. We said we were going to be 1.5 hours, and now we're over our time limit, but hopefully people will be able to withstand another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We've been Middle Easternian, not just Kurds.
So we'll allow Kagnadir to talk, and then followed by Kagberzu.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, Kajidian?
Yes.
Very well. Okay, I really enjoy listening to all of you guys and watching you. I have a hypothetical question to all the panelists. And I believe history will repeat itself. Now, if we fast backward to 2003, when Americans were going to attack Iraq, and if we had Masoud Barzani and Jalal Talabani calling you guys to a room and ask for your opinion, what should we do? Should we democratize Iraq, or we should talk to American and say to them, we help you if you basically allow us to be independent? Thank you.
Can I answer, Gina?
Sorry, me? No, you answer.
No,
yes,
I said,
yes.
no, I said I cannot answer. I think my request would be, please don't form Iraqi government, because that's one of the, I think, the great mistakes the Kurdish leaders did at the time, both Mr. Barzani and the late Talabani. They helped to establish Iraqi central government. Then they basically asking them to please give us our right. If they did not intervene, I predicted that Iraqi was going to be dismembered. You would have 3 states: Shia state, Sunni state, and Kurdish state. But unfortunately, what both Barzani and Talabani did with encouragement from the United States. They formed a central Iraqi government just to turn on them later to do what they are doing now. And this is not the first time. That has happening many times in Kurdish history.
Allow me to add some point in that. You know, when the Constitution of Iraq was established in 2005, and they voted for that. Actually, it was an official referendum for independence happened the similar time, parallel to that constitutional. And people, more than 98% of Kurdistan in Bashur, they voted for independent Kurdistan. I was there. So what happened, Iraq has the best constitution in the region. But with the people in the power, with the involvement of Iran, with the mentality of the Shia opposition who came to the power for the first time, even during the Ottoman Empire, they didn't have a power because Ottoman Empire was Sunni and they didn't allow Shia to be in power. So when these people, they came to the power as a puppet of the Tehran regime, they didn't allow this constitution to be applied. And the reason most of the Kurdish leaders like Talabani, Barzani, they did, I don't call it mistakes because we have to go back to circumstance. They have this kind of the support from international organization, international committee to support them for independent or not. Because I remember those days, the argument was that how about we are staying with Iraq to created to establish our economy sectors. I even remember there was a huge conflict between American and the Barzani and the Talabani about the Peshmerga forces. They want to dissolve Peshmerga forces, and it was one of the Kurdish conditions. We're not going to join Iraq in new government if you don't recognize Peshmerga as forces of the Kurdistan. So it was a really coming back, the negotiation during that time it happened. But for sure, if they had the international support and they have this opportunity, they can declare that independent for sure was the best option based on what we are seeing right now. They trying to actually dissolve this federalism system in Iraq, which is the Iranian regime's plan. Even the Iran now, they ordered to the regimes, the Tehran regime affiliated media to not use Kurdistan region government, to use it north of Iraq, which we have been seeing in Turkey. So now Iran's follow the same policy. Last even don't mention it as a Kurdistan region. The name of Kurdistan is being hard attacked for the enemy of these people. But I mean, I just wanted to add that based on the international circumstance, like 2017's the voting for the independence of Kurdistan, it was the most successful process in the Middle East. It was first time, which I wrote about that, if this process is not being accepted by Western society, it means they don't accept the peaceful way of establishing a new state. You always have to go through war, conflict, and this kind of stuff to establish a new state. How about like a democratic process, people voting for that? But unfortunately, the Western shows us.
Can I suggest to you, there might be a more long-term plan. And look at how the US has tried to get Bashur and Rojava together. They see the postage stamp size of Bashur. And really, a successful Kurdistan needs a seaport, a Mediterranean seaport. And if Rojava had gone to its full extent, and if Rojava and Bashur had come together, you would have a viable state initially. Oh, Dr. Sherko, what do you say to Nader's question?
Nader's question was hypothetical, really, but so it's not that easy to answer hypothetical questions. To go back, but honestly, I think, and I have said it, and I have published Facebook posts on this issue, is that as a, let's say, expert on international relations and state building, I think all the states around the world has been established through crisis. So crisis leads to the establishment of states. The European states were established after 30 years of war, of the what's called the religious wars in Europe, that led to the agreement of Westphalian agreement that established the new nation states in Europe. Most of other states after that, as nation states, were established or formed after World War I, as the dissolution of empires like the Ottoman Empire. The same thing happened after World War II, when the major international powers, the British or the UK and France, weakened and led to the establishment of many other states. The dissolution of Russia or Soviet Union led to establishment of many other states. The same thing with Yugoslavia. I think in the last 2-3 decades, we had two opportunities in Iraq to establish a Kurdish state. One was when the Iraqi state dissolved after the intervention of Americans in 1991. But I think we had a much better opportunities in 2014, when ISIS came in and the Iraqi army dissolved one more time. What the Kurdish leadership did is basically waited until Iraqi government strengthened, Iraqi army was reformed, revitalized, and only after then we tried to go for referendum. We should have just taken the opportunity in 2014 and declared Kurdish independent state in 2014. Really. So we probably need to wait for another opportunities. And I always say that the Kurdish people do not have an issue with the opportunities, but with missing opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kagberzu, are you, no, is Kagberzu?
What does Behrouz think about Nada's question? And we'll get on to Bazu, and that'll have to be the last. Behrouz? Should the Kurds have gone for an independent state in 2005?
Actually, I study at geopolitics at university, but always I refuse to talk about geopolitical issues in the way that they do. So that's why I always try to put comment as a person, as like a cultural person, as like a part of civil society. So, but of course, I'm not knowledgeable to talk about that, and I prefer to talk about other issues. I like to focus on the society more rather than these big issues that I should go back to 2003 and 2005, and yeah. So, but generally, my perspective is a different one. Yeah.
It's already half an hour over the time, Gina, and I have a long list of questions. Now, apologies to the attendees that we won't necessarily answer the questions. However, from Kava, we had what I understood from Dr. Hussein Tahiri is that Kurds need a project plan that is tangible, comprehensive, inclusive, and based on Kurdish national interest. But how Kurds can define Kurdish national interest and draw a conclusion on it? Do they have it? And if not, how they can pursue towards that? I'll move on to some anonymous points or questions. This is from Anonymous. I believe there's a lot to learn from the Ukraine war. How does Kurdistan cause, could it be navigated within the greater global struggles, in particular Ukraine, so we can attract somehow similar support? Another question from Kava. Mr. Boochani started by mentioning the need to empower Kurdish individuals and becoming a nation, but he only reminded us of all the shortfalls and issues Kurds might have? Can you propose tools to empower Kurdish individuals and how to become the nation you describe? I believe some of that was answered already. Another question from Cyrus. Very good point, Gina. A strategy for penetration into mainstream media is greatly needed. More Kurdish writers and content creator is required. There is a lot to learn from the developed political systems, including in the West. However, we should be in control in consultation with those organizations while doing so to build our democratic foundations and our future leaders. A point from Parvin is, I agree with Shukriya that we Kurds don't have much financial resources and not many highly educated compared to Persians. How many Kurdish millionaires do we have that are ready to support the movement? How many strong TVs and broadcasting in English and even in Farsi so the rest of Iran can understand Kurds? How many famous journalists do we have compared to Persians? But he agrees if we could do more if we united. Look, there are too many. I will just go to randomly select them. One of them says, just to propose a naive proposal, top-down and bottom-up approaches to nation building would require internal, regional, and international support. Is it fair to say we need experts rather than celebrities and individuals to have a systematic approach to nation building? Considering all these, do you think, is it possible and more beneficial to create self-managed teams of experts, such as international law experts, economists, environmental experts, entrepreneurs, etc., to help define the Kurdish narrative first and diversify socio-economic and political aspirations for Kurds, and then design a project to unite Kurds with aspirational but also attainable goals? These expert groups can create an ecosystem interconnected by an ultimate goal of enabling the Kurdish issue to be advocated on international platforms and institutions and attract alliances at the internal, regional, and international levels, while supporting global peace, regional security, and individual prosperity. I'll leave it at that because
fantastic idea, and it would need quite a bit of resources to support it. But
one last one I'll read from Alison Buckley. Dr. Sherko mentioned successful international support for the Palestinian, and Behrouz has mentioned getting Western people to network with Kurds. Should Westerners aid Kurds like they have Palestinians, or are there other ways? So it's quite late. We're not going to answer these, but these are left with the panelists to think about, either for future reports or future webinars.
Yeah, we might
say something. Yeah, in 1 minute, if you give me. But actually, according to my experience in Australia, that I've been working, that I'm only one person, but through my work, I see that how is really important that we create that connection, create that network, and how we can empower our nation. I'm just one person that I did some work with Aboriginal people in Australia. I did the play with Aboriginal people in Australia. I did a book even with them. Recently, for example, with Rohingya platform in the Monash University, with Hazara people. You know, I'm one person that I see that, oh, I can create some change. So just imagine if we Kurds in diaspora, we have this mentality to work with other people, other group of people, other minorities, and we work together to empower each other, definitely we are able to make at least Kurdistan and Kurdish people recognized internationally as a nation. That's really important. So we should work in that way. But I just leave the answer for the question that do we get independent? Are we able to do that? yeah, just to the experts. But my perspective is that we should change our perspective, the way we do activism. That is a way.
Yep, everyone can do their bit.
Yeah,
well,
everyone do a bit, that will be a big change.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hussein. Thank you, Dr. Sherko. Thank you, Shukriya. Thank you, Behrouz. Also, a big thanks to all my colleagues in KLA for making this webinar possible. And of course, to all those who are listening, thank you for your interest. In a couple of days, the webinar recording will be available on the KLA website. Just look up Kurdish Lobby Australia. And I'm not sure what location it'll be, but anyway, please send the link to anyone you think might care about these issues. We are also hoping to publish a transcript of the webinar. KLA realises this webinar has only touched the surface. It seems the struggle for democracy and justice is never ending. And just as you don't expect military commanders to win wars without an army, we are hoping webinars on this topic will inspire people from all walks of life to think about what they are willing to do for the people of Kurdistan. Thank you, one and all, and goodbye for now.